All right, so it is now a little after 2 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started. I want to say welcome to the informational webinar for the Partial to Full Accreditation Initiative, or P2F as we sometimes call it. This is our 9th year offering this initiative or course, and it's something we really look forward to every year because all of us here at Clinic feel so strongly about the importance of training more advocates to become fully accredited and meeting that demand for removal defense services. I know a lot of you and your communities are feeling that need as well. So with that, we'll introduce ourselves and then we'll get into the content for today. So I am Allison DePopi. I'm a senior attorney on Clinic's training and technical assistance team. This is my 2nd year of being involved with the Partial to Full P2F course, and one of my favorite things about working with Clinic. It's a very exciting course to be involved with. Before I started at Clinic, I was a supervising/managing attorney at an affiliate organization, and before that, I was actually a fully accredited representative myself. So I know what it's like to kind of enter into immigration practice in this way, and I'm really excited about helping others to build the skills and confidence that you need to be able to practice an immigration court through this P2F course. And today I'm also joined by Liz Carlson, another one of the P2F trainers. Liz, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Carlson. I go by Liz. I'm based in DC, and this will be, I think, my 3rd year participating in the P2F initiative. The first year we had it virtually, and last year we were back in person, which was super exciting, as we will be in person again early next year. So like Allison, love this initiative, very excited to hopefully work with many of you in the coming months on this program.
Great. So this is what we're going to cover today. This is an informational webinar. It's not meant to get into the substantive requirements or the application process for how to obtain partial or full accreditation. If you do want more information about obtaining accreditation, we have a DOJ recognition and accreditation toolkit that you can access through our P2F initiative page and through Clinic's website in general. We have that linked at the end of the slides under resources. So don't worry, it's there for you at the end of the slides. And in that toolkit, you'll find a recorded webinar that talks about the substantive requirements for full accreditation. So as far as today, this is just a quick overview of what we will cover, starting with the purpose of the Partial to Full Accreditation Initiative, providing kind of an overview of what it is, going into the eligibility criteria for being selected into the training program, the timeline of activities that you can expect, including the application process, selection, training registration, activities and assignments that participants are expected to complete if they're selected. And then we have a list of resources for you to review about the initiative and again, materials for obtaining full accreditation. And then we have plenty of time at the end for questions if there are any that remain. So with that, I'll hand it over to Liz.
Great. Yeah, so start with sort of the basics here. Why are we doing this initiative, right? And the goal here is really to expand removal defense representation capacity through the recognition and accreditation program. We know how much representation matters to the outcome of removal proceedings. We know that people who don't have representation in immigration court are much less likely to secure relief from removal and much more likely to be ordered removed. And we also know how, especially in the past few years with large numbers of arrival, a lot of programs have been, sort of tested in their capacity. So we know representatives, want to help recent arrivals, but can be really limited in what they can do because so many are in removal proceedings and partially accredited reps cannot provide removal defense representation. So how we hope to address this, how we have addressed this over the past several years and hope to scale up moving forward, is to have more partially accredited reps become fully accredited. And so to that end, we have this really robust removal defense training that incorporates recorded webinars, a case assessment exercise, a writing assignment, and then we'll really culminate with this multi-day live trial skills training that will be in Walnut Creek, California, outside of San Francisco, where you will have the opportunity to practice your skills, so including direct examination, cross-examination, and closing arguments. And then following that training, clinics provides support on that full accreditation application to DOJ. So this is really kind of a months long, almost a year-long process. It starts again with these recorded webinars that will be available on an e-learning course site and over Zoom. And then that will be worked on for several months, as we'll go into in more detail, and then ending with this live trial skills training. And I will turn it back to Allison to talk about the eligibility criteria.
Thank you. So you're probably wondering what it takes to be selected for this opportunity. And each year we have, a lot of interest in participating in this event. So we've listed out here kind of the 5 main requirements for applicants. And first and foremost, we would expect that you should already be a partially accredited representative that is working within a DOJ recognized organization. In the past, we've made a few limited exceptions for individuals who are not partially accredited, but have already been working for some time with a licensed attorney or working on removal defense cases, maybe with a fully accredited representative. And they would, in theory, meet the requirements for partial accreditation, but haven't applied yet. So that would mean that the applicant does have sufficient training, knowledge, and experience working on affirmative immigration cases under the supervision of an attorney or an accredited representative, and maybe already has dabbled in removal defense assistance as well. Again, we do, though, focus our selections on partially accredited representatives. That would be the exception to the rule, or the exception to not already have partial accreditation. We do expect that the organization that you're working for already have Department of Justice recognition. As Liz said, kind of the entire point of this initiative is that we're attempting to help expand capacity. So we want to help those who are already working with DOJ in DOJ recognized sites. Third, we expect that participants will actually apply for full accreditation at the end of the training, and the deadline to submit that application for full accreditation would be August 29th, 2025. So that's sort of at the end of toward the end of the course. And then once participants obtain full accreditation, we expect them to go into removal defense services. So ideally, the fully accredited representative would start accepting removal defense cases right away. And we know that's not always realistic. We know sometimes it takes some time to build the capacity or support for new accredited representatives to take on tons of removal defense cases, but we do ask that participants make a good faith attempt to take on removal defense representation following the initiative. And then lastly, we want to select applicants who have the support of their program and their supervisor in pursuing this endeavor, meaning that they will provide you with the resources and the time that you need to complete the training, setting up systems for the program to start accepting removal defense cases if it doesn't already, and helping you sort of balance your workload and work removal defense representation into your caseload. So given those general eligibility requirements, these are some of the questions we receive about who's eligible as a participant. And one question is whether you have to be a clinic affiliate to apply. And the answer is no, you don't have to be a clinic affiliate to apply, but we do have a limited capacity for the training, and we'll give preference to clinic affiliates who already have partial accreditation. We welcome applications from anyone not affiliated with clinic as long as you meet those eligibility requirements, and we will consider them as long as there is space and capacity. We also have had in the past individuals who already have full accreditation, but they wanted to take this training to sort of brush up on their court skills or build the confidence to go actually into representation. And as we mentioned before, the main purpose or the primary function of this training is to make partially accredited representatives more equipped to become fully accredited and therefore expanding removal defense capacity. We will accept applications from fully accredited representatives sometimes and take them into consideration if space allows. And then if they are accepted into the program, we do really expect that they will provide removal defense services at the end of the training. Again, we do prioritize selection for clinic affiliates who have partial accreditation, non-affiliates with partial accreditation, fully accredited reps, feel free to apply. We will definitely consider those applications as space allows. We will not, however, accept any attorneys into the training program. So this is an opportunity for accredited representatives only. And so if you're interested in applying, you need to submit an application, which is on that P2F webpage that's linked at the end of the training slides. And so then we'll take a look at your responses to the application questions, and that'll allow us to gauge whether your program has the capacity to take on or continue removal defense work, whether you'll have enough support to succeed in this endeavor. And we'll also look at your geographic location and which immigration court you'd be practicing in to sort of look at the demand or the need for services in the area, as well as potential support that you would have. All right, so back to Liz for the timeline of activities.
Yeah, and all of this will be available on our website as well, so you can always refer to this. But just to kind of go through this quickly, so the deadline for the submission of the online application will be August 9th, so coming up in just a few weeks. It's a relatively straightforward application, so it won't take, I don't think preparing the application will take that long. We will then, the clinic staff will go ahead and review those applications, again, keeping in mind the criteria that Allison had mentioned, looking again for partially accredited reps already, look at those who are already clinic affiliates, although not required, look at those who will have robust support from their program, basically looking at our eligibility criteria and making sure that the applicants, meet that criteria before we accept them. By August 28th, everyone will receive notification of whether or not they've been selected into the program, and will have until September 6th to provide confirmation of participation in that program. So just do keep those dates in mind, that it's a pretty kind of quick turnaround from when you will receive notification of that you've been selected and when you actually have to confirm participation. And I know this, may bump up against summer holidays and things like that. So please just, if you are going to pursue this, make sure that you are on top of that deadline, and that is going to be a hard deadline for confirmation of participation. Okay, because oftentimes we do have a wait list. So just keep those important dates in mind. And then by September 13th, it will be the deadline to complete the registration process, which includes a payment. It will be, as we've mentioned, $545 for affiliates or $650 for non-affiliates, and submission of the agreement, which would be signed by both the participant and the participant's supervisor. Okay, so that's sort of the initial stage. And then is when we actually sort of, dive into the substance of the training. So on September 20th, we will hold an orientation webinar at 2 o'clock Eastern time, during which time clinic staff will discuss expectations, review the schedule, and answer questions that people have. You'll also want to start, and we'll talk about this in more detail, start planning to observe an immigration court hearing. That is going to be a requirement as part of this program, that you observe either a master calendar or an individual hearing, maybe both, and submit reflections in writing on what you observed during that process. And then just continuing along with the timeline of activities. The first part of this process involves watching pre-recorded webinars that are intended to give you the basics on removal proceedings. So how procedure works in immigration court, how removal proceedings function, what are the practice rules of the Executive Office for Immigration Review. We will also have a pre-recorded webinar that gives an overview of asylum law, as this year we are going to be focused on an asylum case. And we also will have a webinar on case assessment, which is basically a tool that we use as advocates, as representatives, to kind of keep ourselves organized, understand the elements that we need to prove in order to win our case. And you will also have reading materials. So perhaps most importantly, a case file based on an asylum case that will be used during the court skills training in person and for the case assessment exercise. So we are still finalizing the details of the case, but we do know it will be an asylum case. And so typically that reading will include, the applicant's I-589, a declaration from the applicant, and other supporting evidence in support of the asylum case. Okay, so this is sort of a mock case. Oftentimes it's based on a real case with some details changed, but it's designed as sort of a case that's good for teaching purposes, that will kind of require you as a participants to look at the elements of an asylum claim and figure out whether the facts of this particular case would meet the requirements for the applicant to be granted asylum. And then all webinars would have to be completed by January 10th, with a case assessment due by January 17th. And then sort of the final steps here would be the in-person training, right? So that would be February 4th through 6th. The idea, we are starting early in the morning on the 4th. So the idea would be arriving on February 3rd, ready to go for that in-person training in Walnut Creek, California. And just to emphasize that attendance for the whole duration of the training is required. All the exercises that we're doing are sort of building on each other. And so in order to receive, your certificate for participation, you do have to complete the entire in-person training, okay, for those three days. And then after that, there is sort of post-training activities. The timeline would include posting your immigration court observations to the course website by February 3rd. You can post them earlier if you happen to finish before that. And then we do also have a short legal writing assignment, and that is to help participants build or put together a stronger application for full accreditation to DOJ. Typically, we haven't quite decided what the writing assignment will be this year. Usually it's nothing sort of too extensive. In the past, we've done, drafting a simple motion before the immigration court. It will probably be something of that nature. And we will also have a pre-recorded webinar on legal writing to help you sort of get a sense of how to draft a motion or how to do legal writing that's appropriate for immigration court. And then we do provide, we will review those submissions and provide feedback on that legal writing assignment. And then just to go into a little bit more detail on the court skills training itself. So this, again, will be in person in California. It is kind of an intense 3-day period. This is sort of a sample of what we've done in the past. There's always a possibility for a slight modification as we sort of change up, maybe some of the workshops, the plenary sessions. But basically the point here is to really focus on practical court skills to prepare you to actually represent clients in immigration court. So there will be presentations by our instructors, but there will also be a lot of group-based work. So we always, want to emphasize that people come very ready to participate, very familiar with the case file, ready to support each other, give each other feedback, and really, again, work on these important skills. So, how do we conduct an effective direct examination of our client? How do we prepare clients for cross-examination in immigration court? How do we sort of rehabilitate clients on redirect examination? What is a closing argument and what makes it effective, right? So these are the kind of skills that are, challenging. And so it's the sort of idea behind this training is that we get the chance to practice those skills in a supportive environment. And I also think it will be really fun. We always have a good time. We had a good time earlier this year when we were in Atlanta. So it sort of ends up being, I don't know, almost like a college environment. We're all like staying at the same place and having meals together. And it's just a really nice, supportive place to be. So I'm looking forward to it, and encourage all of you to apply. All right, and I'll turn it back to Allison.
Yeah, I would echo that. It's definitely fun. It's a bonding experience for sure. So I would echo that sentiment. Um, and this, apart from the court skills training, this course also offers a lot of training and support before and after the course. So I wanted to highlight, starting with before the in-person court skills training, kind of what's going to happen, and then go into what happens after that as well. So as you probably know, applying for full accreditation requires that you demonstrate a little bit more than what's required for partial accreditation. You have to demonstrate that you have the skills for effective litigation, which includes things like legal writing, legal research, oral advocacy. And so before the court skills training, and really starting kind of at the beginning of the course opening, you would be thinking about gaining immigration court observation and experience, and starting to document those experiences for your application. So having kind of seen what it takes for a successful full accreditation application, we require that you attend hearings and observe them, but we also encourage you to get as much hands-on experience as possible by working with an attorney or fully accredited representative mentor on removal defense cases, doing things like helping draft pleadings, writing motions or briefs for immigration court, and observing the consultations and strategy preparations for clients in removal. And kind of keeping tabs on those experiences so that you can show the Office of Legal Access Policy what skills for effective litigation you've gained during this course. And the more experience you obtain, the more confident you'll be in handling your first removal case after you become accredited. So not just for the application, but the experiences are really valuable for kind of life skills as a removal defense practitioner. And I know we said we're not going to go into the specific requirements for accreditation, so I won't talk any more about those kind of requirements, but please do watch the recorded webinar on applying for full accreditation that is on our DOJ RNA toolkit. Again, it's linked at the end of the slides. Don't worry, you'll have that link. The webinar goes all through all the requirements and our recommendations for applications as well. So that's before the court skills training. And then once the court skills training concludes, you'll keep working with your mentors or mentors on gaining hands-on assistance and experience with court matters. You'll want to start taking a look at the resources we have in our DOJ RNA toolkit about how to apply for full accreditation. We have things like, again, the recorded webinar, but more hands-on tools, including like an annotated checklist and sample documents that you need to draft for your full accreditation application under a tab called Application Support Materials on the toolkit. And if you have any questions about whether you have enough to meet the requirements or whether your application is drafted properly, we will give you the opportunity to ask questions of our program management support team, and or attend kind of a one-on-one consultation if you feel like you need it to kind of get that application prepared. And then once it's prepared and ready to submit, we'll review it for you and make sure that everything looks good, and then ask you to share a copy of the final application with us through the course website once you submit it. And that is expected before August 29th, 2025. That's the deadline for submitting the application. It's kind of uncertain how long OLAP will take to adjudicate the application. We can't really predict what their processing times will be, but we ask in a memorandum of understanding that once you receive a decision on your full accreditation, within a month of that you provide us a final report that explains how this training has impacted your accreditation, you professionally, as well as your organization's ability and capacity to serve the immigrants in your communities. If you don't obtain full accreditation for whatever reason, you should explain that in the final report, and just sort of reflecting on the process. As I said, the processing times are kind of hard to predict. So right now, if it were right now, you would be expecting about 60 to 90 days after that August 29th deadline that you would get a decision from OLAP on whether your application is approved or not. So as I mentioned, here's the link, the QR code, as well as the full link to the partial to full landing page that we have talked about, that contains the application, more information about the initiative, including once this webinar concludes, in the next few days or so, our training team will upload the recording of this webinar so you can rewatch it. The application will go live shortly after the webinar. There's a sample memorandum of understanding that it looks like the one that would be executed between any selected participants, organization, and clinic. There is a outline of the activities and timeline that Liz mentioned today. And there's a link to that RNA toolkit with the recorded webinars and other application support materials like the checklist with sample documents. So with that kind of concludes our overview of the timeline, the eligibility requirements, all of the kind of nuts and bolts of the partial to full accreditation initiative. And we wanted to open it up, and if any of you have questions. I see that we have a few open now, so I will read them and we'll try to answer them live. The first one says, can I use webinars and training I have done before this training toward this accreditation? Definitely yes. Anytime you apply for full accreditation, you're going to want to list any webinar training that you've done that's relevant to the practice of law, particularly relevant to the practice of removal defense, right? If you're already partially accredited, your renewal application or your upgrade application would be meant to show OLAP that you have the skills for effective litigation. So if you have webinars that show that, you definitely would want to include them in addition to this one, right? But we've seen OLAP approve applications where the partial to full training was sort of the court skills training that proves effective skills for effective litigation. But definitely if you have other experiences and trainings, you would want to include those.
And if I could just make a comment, if folks, I'm seeing questions coming in the chat and those get lost very quickly. So please put them in the Q&A. If you've already put in the chat, if you can move it to the Q&A, that'd be great. So we don't lose your question.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so what else do we have in the Q&A here? I took the course during COVID. Can we retake the course, or can we submit the application for full accreditation? I guess I don't really know the answer to that. We don't have like a specific criteria on retaking the course. I think probably would consider new applicants first, right? I don't know, Liz, if you disagree, you can weigh in on that as well.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Just to give people.
Yeah, and I know it was during COVID and it was virtual, so it feels different, right, to do it in person, but we always have limited capacity for this training, so. Okay, how often do you have to renew full accreditation? Accreditation has to be renewed every 3 years. Is there any possibility to have a remote option or alternative option if we apply, accepted, and can't travel to Walnut Creek? So no, we don't have a virtual option. I think part of, some of you may have taken this during COVID, and that's definitely a great experience if that's the only option, but being in person and being able to practice these skills live is a really important aspect of court skills training. So we do expect participants to travel to Walnut Creek. All right. My organization has no attorneys. Could I attempt this process relying on your training without any physical mentor? Liz, do you want to answer that based on the past? Have you had applicants with no mentor?
You don't have to have an attorney at your organization, but you do need to identify a mentor, some type of mentor. Like you can't rely just on clinic for technical assistance. Like we do provide technical assistance, but we expect Yeah, this is going to be part of the application process, is identifying someone who can serve as your mentor. And again, it could be someone at a different organization, but you do have to identify a mentor. I think this was a question, like I think 3 people or so asked this question. So
Oh, really?
good
Okay.
question, yeah, in different ways, but yeah.
Yeah, I know that's always a struggle for people, especially if they're practicing in more remote areas where there isn't a lot of removable defense capacity. And like we usually give advice to people to sort of try to join pro bono events or networking with people, not just for this training, but I think having that mentorship is really important to removal defense practice in general. So definitely an important part. Okay, I'm trying to scroll through.
Did we answer this one? How long should I be partially accredited before applying for full? I don't think there's any timeline on that.
That's right. Yeah, there's no hard timeline requirement that you just have to have you have to prove that you have the skills needed for effective litigation. So however long it takes you to kind of gather up those skills and trainings, right? We recommend a court skills training. We recommend practice in legal writing, observations in immigration court. So this course does kind of cover the timeline of this course, in theory, covers what you need to be able to qualify for full accreditation. But you don't have to have been partially accredited for any length of time.
Question about, do we need to do any homework in the evenings? I don't think so. That's a good question. I think the trainers might have homework, but I don't feel like you guys should, right, Allison? I'm trying to remember. I don't.
Yeah, I think that we didn't. I think the only thing was we asked people to review for the closing arguments exercise, just to be really familiar with the case file, and something you should kind of be familiar with anyways. But I agree. I don't think participants really had to do much homework in the evenings.
Do we need to focus on asylum as the first target for full accreditation? I'm not sure I understand the question. You don't have to commit to taking asylum in particular cases, I guess. We're asking people to commit to removal defense, but not necessarily to doing asylum work. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but
Yeah, feel free to type it in again if not, but that's how I read it as well. The case file that we're using is an asylum case, but that's not to say that when we ask you to take on removal defense cases, it has to be asylum. We changed it this year just because participants were kind of requesting that. That was the most in demand need. The next one is, does the registration fee include the in-person training in California, or is that an additional fee? So the registration fee includes the in-person training in California.
yeah, you would obviously be responsible for transportation costs, and dinner is not included, but breakfast and lunch are included in that fee as well.
We answered this one already. There's a sort of second part of this question that Edwin wrote, that I didn't answer my first time answering this question. You don't need to, if you already have partial accreditation and you're upgrading to full accreditation, you don't need to retake the comprehensive or fundamentals course. Edwin, you took COIL, which is clinic's version of the fundamentals course that's required for initial accreditation. You don't need to retake it. It's not required to retake it again. Okay. If my partial accreditation expires August 2025, when is best to do the training until my partial accreditation? So you don't have to be in a renewal period to go from a partial to full. You can apply for full accreditation at any time, right? With an initial application for accreditation, if you're already partially accredited, you can apply. Even if your accreditation doesn't expire for 2 more years, you can apply to upgrade from partial to full. But if you're sort of close to having to renew your application, you would kind of count the application as a renewal plus an upgrade from partial to full. If your partial accreditation is expiring in August 2025, you might want to have an eye toward completing all of the requirements of the course a little bit early, right? We have till kind of the end of August to submit the application, but you might want to submit a little bit earlier so that you don't have to apply twice, right? You don't want to have to renew your partial and then upgrade from partial to full. You can do it kind of all in one application. And that would be feasible as long as you submit the application before the date of your expiration of your partial accreditation. That would be definitely feasible. The next one is, what is the cost? I want to make sure I don't misquote. I think it's $545. I'll go back in the slides so I'm not saying it wrong. $545 or $650, I think. Yes, so if you're a clinic affiliate, the cost is $545. If you're a non-affiliate, it's $650.
And then I see another question about what it covers. So again, does not cover airfare, covers most meals, well, breakfast and lunch, does not cover dinner. There's a question, will all applications be given the same opportunity starting August 9th, or am I more likely to be able to take the training if I get my application in ASAP? That's a good question. It doesn't, as long as you get it in by the deadline, we'll consider them all. So there's no advantage to submitting it first. We're really going to be looking at the criteria that Allison had laid out earlier.
The next question is, we mentioned that it's expected to take a removal defense case right away if the application is approved, and can we co-counsel cases if we don't feel ready to do it on our own? I think that's totally acceptable and probably a responsible practice, right, to build competency and confidence. My first case was co-counseled. I think a lot of first
Yep.
cases are co-counseled. That's, yeah, absolutely fine. Instead of renewing partial accreditation, can I apply for full? I think I answered that before. You definitely can. Kind of treat your renewal as a renewal and application for full. Can the mentor be in another state? Yeah, I think that's fine. I think especially with if you're in an area where it's hard to have more direct access to a mentor, especially with the WebEx hearings and virtual options, it's definitely an option. I think it would be preferable to have somebody near you. I don't know, what do you think, Liz?
Yeah, and again, I know this is where, like, you know, what's ideal runs up against what's practical or possible, right? Like ideally you'd have someone close by to you, but you know, that's not the reality for a lot of people. So I think it is possible, but yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. The next question is, how often does clinic offer this initiative? Once per year? I think that's right. I think, yeah, I don't think it's been, I think even during COVID, it was offered every year, right, Liz?
Yep.
It was virtual.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, the next one is, my agency is applying for DOJ accreditation. Maybe that means recognition, and I'm applying for partial accreditation at the same time. I've worked on our pro se team under supervision of a licensed attorney for a year. I've gone with colleagues to witness court hearings. Would I be eligible to apply this year, even though I wouldn't be partially accredited until October? So that's a great question, and that goes to sort of the eligibility exceptions that we've sometimes considered in the past, right? We said that we give preference to applicants who are already partially accredited. But we have made exceptions in the past for applicants who would theoretically meet the requirements for partial accreditation. And it sounds like in this case, you have the training that you needed, you have the knowledge and experience that you needed, you just still have the application pending. And especially with the additional kind of experience you have in immigration court, I would encourage you to apply. You're not excluded from applying. That kind of fits right within the exception that I mentioned that we've considered in the past. Okay, we have a question about the 40-hour course certificate. I'm not really sure what the question is, whether it's still valid because it was issued 3 years ago. I don't know if you're already partially accredited or not. If you are, you don't have to retake the course. If you're not partially accredited already, if you don't have accreditation, OLAP may have some concerns about how recent the fundamentals course was. But it would really be fact specific depending on your circumstances. If you've taken other courses, continue to take other trainings, it might be okay. That's something we would have to look at on a case-by-case basis. If you want to follow up with more information, I'll be happy to try to answer that.
There's a question about the lodging in California. So yes, that is also included in the cost, and we will be reserving a block of rooms at the Embassy Suites, I believe. So yeah, we'll all be staying at the same hotel, and that will be part of the cost.
Next question is the registration fee supposed to be covered by the organization as it will be used for the recognized organization? Generally it is. Generally the organization would pay for the registration fee as sort of a professional development opportunity. I'm not sure that's always the case. I think that's something to decide between the applicant and the organization. But keeping in mind that accreditation only applies at the recognized site, right? So, you know, I don't know if that's something that an individual would want to take on their own, right? I think it's definitely more common for the organization to support that. And it goes to, you know, our application process requires that the organization support you in this endeavor. So I hope that answers that. Is it a requirement to be part of a nonprofit or to apply on this program? I plan to find one. Is it necessary to have one before the application? I'm about to finish my 40-hour program by month end. We do require that you work for a DOJ recognized organization by the time of the application. Also volunteers, volunteering for a recognized organization is also acceptable.
Do we need to agree to take removal cases after obtaining full accreditation? Yes, that's part of the program. I think you've answered this question already.
Yeah, I think so. I think we answered that one as well about accommodations in California. Okay, the next one is about says I only do legal work part-time. Do you think it's okay for part-time people to take on asylum cases? I think it really depends, right? I don't know what part-time means, the capacity is, what the caseload looks like. I think it's really difficult to work removal defense cases into a caseload in general. So you have to really make sure that you have the time to dedicate to those cases to make sure you're providing competent and diligent representation. And I don't know if I can answer that, you know, for you. It's just something that you would have to think about. Liz, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Like, I don't think there's any like prohibition on it. It's just a matter of thinking about how kind of intense these cases are and whether you're able to devote the time that you need to them. But I don't think like 100% yes or no.
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely have fully accredited reps and attorneys in our network that are part-time and do removal defense. So it's not out of the question. I think we answered what the registration includes. But
Lodging
again,
is included, like just to be,
yes,
it's a little confusing. Lodging,
yes.
lodging does not include airfare.
Same question again.
Max people, there is, I don't remember if it's 36.
Yeah, I forget the exact number too, but it's something around, something between 30 and 35. And if our training team has that answer, maybe they can post it in the chat for us. 36. Thank you so much.
So it's a small group, which is, you know, why we keep it small so that people can really get the most out of it.
many cases are we expected to take after obtaining full accreditation? Will it count if we're taking removal cases at our office? So we expect that you, as the participant, the applicant, will agree to take removal defense cases after the conclusion of the training. We don't have a requirement like you have to take 10 cases per year. We don't have a hard requirement like that. We just ask that you make a good faith attempt to start accepting removable defense cases into your caseload. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. We don't have a hard requirement. We just ask that you make a good faith attempt. I think I answered this already. Accreditation. Do we have any more suggestions for finding a mentor?
I know this always comes up, and it's
yeah, it's tough.
Parts of it.
I think that when we get this question, our affiliates ask this question, we generally encourage participation in local immigration pro bono events. Like Legal Aid will host, in my area, twice a year, they host a naturalization clinic. And that's a good place to network with immigration attorneys. Just going to immigration court to observe and introducing yourself to practitioners that are there for filing or for master calendar hearings, whatever the case may be. Getting involved in local listservs if there are any. There are also several immigration specific Facebook groups, and some of them are kind of niche, like people who represent, Ukrainians, for example, or Afghans, but we encourage you to just kind of get out there and introduce yourself and network. It is difficult though. We definitely acknowledge that. If there are other nonprofits in your area, even if yours doesn't have attorneys or fully accredited representatives, I know if someone had approached me from a different organization in my former capacity as a supervisor or manager, I would have definitely been glad to, mentor somebody else in that situation. So nonprofits may be a good option. We answered that. 36 applicants will be chosen. Have we seen certain states refuse or do not process full accreditation applications and only accepting partial? I'm not sure what you mean. The adjudication is done by OLAP. So the adjudication standards don't vary by state at all. The factor would be whether you have the skills for effective litigation. So demonstrating, in addition to knowledge and experience needed to be an effective immigration advocate for partial accreditation, you have to show court skills. So if you can't show enough observation and experience and competence in legal writing, for example, then that would be sort of the reason why they would deny full, but approve partial. I hope that answers your question. If not, please repose it in the chat or in the Q&A. Okay, so Raina asks, do you have to have an attorney in your office for OLAP to approve a full accreditation application? The answer is no, you don't have to have. You could be the only rep at your organization and be fully accredited. The requirement, again, is just that you have, as the proposed representative, skills for effective litigation. So we recommend that we require that you have a mentor for this project because that's how you can get hands-on experience in participating and observing immigration proceedings.
There's a question about the slides. They were emailed out at 12:15 today, so you should have them in your email.
Not sure I understand the next question. It's asking whether you need the 40-hour fundamental course that's required for initial accreditation. Needed to be part of any JOD associated. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't understand the question, but you only need the minimum 40-hour fundamentals course if you've never been accredited before. That's a requirement for initial accreditation. If you've already taken it and it's been a long time, OLAP may disfavor that. If you've already taken it and you're partially accredited, you don't need to take it again.
Yes, there's a question, can more than one person from the same organization apply? Yes.
What has been the accreditation rate of prior year classes? I've never actually done the math. I don't know the answer to that. In the general sense, I know it's a very high rate of approval. Liz, do you know if you could estimate the percentage of approvals?
I guess not everyone ends up applying.
That's
So,
true. Yeah.
but I feel like
Yeah.
for those who do, they're generally, I believe, approved.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, we answered that already. Do we have other suggestions about obtaining court-related training since this only accepts 36 participants? Court-related, I mean, I think clinic offers other trainings that can be valuable to a full accreditation application. Like we have one coming up for practice skills that would include valuable information for a full accreditation application. So again, I feel like I'm a broken record, but the determinative factor is if you have the skills for effective litigation. And so always be on the lookout for trainings that are geared toward legal writing, legal research, practice skills, court skills, oral advocacy, those types of additional skills. And of course, the knowledge and experience that you need can be obtained in multiple ways. Training, hands-on experience, observation, a combination of all of the above is usually what's best. I think I answered that already.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions about the fundamentals. If folks are interested in the COIL course, perhaps the Comprehensive Overview of Immigration Law, just look at the clinic website. We offer that 3 times a year. So it's going on now and then it will open up again. So if you're needing a fundamentals course, just look at clinic website training. And if it's not open now, it will be open shortly.
Yeah, so Maria asked a question to clarify whether some of the course will be online and others in person. So this is an e-learning course that includes an in-person component. We have recorded webinars you're required to watch before and after the court skills training that cover things like Liz was going over before, like, the fundamentals of asylum and EOIR practice rules and ethics and other important topics related to removal defense practice. The court skills training covers court skills that we can practice in a live setting. So it's both. So it's when the course opens in September and we go September through February doing online activities, assignments and recorded webinars, and then it's the live portion is in February. The next question is, does the organization have to be DOJ recognized before applying for partial accreditation? So the organization has to already be recognized, or you can apply simultaneously. To be recognized, the agency has to include at least one proposed accredited representative. So if there's not already an accredited representative, then the application would be submitted simultaneously. If not, you can apply anytime after the recognition is granted.
It's a question, if a person needs extra time, would they work with you on it? I'm not sure what that's referring to, if it's extra time on the application. I'm not sure exactly what it means. So maybe you can clarify.
Yeah, I was thinking for assignments. So definitely if you could just re-ask the question, that would be helpful.
And then when and how will the course schedule for the webinars be released? So there should be on the website kind of the summary of steps for what the sort of training will look like. But basically the webinar schedule is basically watching like 1 or 2 webinars per month up until the date of the training in February. I think we got to all the open questions, I believe. Well, I guess we have one more. I guess we have a few more
Couple
minutes.
more.
A couple more minutes. Okay, I guess we have 5 more minutes. So, okay. So the webinars will all be pre-recorded webinars. Well, except for the orientation kickoff webinar on September 20th. Other than that, they will be pre-recorded webinars. There's a question about a writing sample. This person already has a lot of experience writing applications as well as motions. Can I send one of these as my writing sample? I guess we would probably prefer that everyone do the writing sample that's part of the course. I guess that would be my preference.
Yeah, I think both can be true, right? Like you're going to be required to do the writing assignment for this course as practice, and you can also submit both writing samples with your application for full accreditation. You don't have to choose between them, right? Like we've had people submit a full brief that they've written with the supervision of an attorney, as well as like the motion to continue that they did as part of this course. August 9th application is for the training, correct? Not the application to DOJ for accreditation. Do we submit the accreditation? Yeah, so next August, so this August, application to participate in the initiative. And then by the following August 29th of 2025, that's when you'll be all done with the requirements for the course. You'll have done the court skills training. You'll have plenty of time to get experience and log time in immigration court. That's the final deadline to submit your full accreditation. We don't submit them together as a group. You submit them by the deadline in consultation with our program management team, and we review them for you before you submit. I think that concludes the questions that we had open in the Q&A, and we're running out of time as well. We're at about 2:57. So again, we encourage you to take a look at the partial to full landing page that we have linked here. QR code and link are there. There's the timeline and summary of steps, the action plan for full accreditation, and a link to the toolkit, which includes, I think a lot of today's questions really have more to do with requirements for obtaining accreditation. So that's where you'll want to go. There's 2 webinars, one for partial accreditation and one for full. And I encourage you to look at those and keep an eye out for the P2F landing page to be updated with the recording of this webinar, as well as the application going live. Anything else to add, Liz?
I don't think so. Thanks to everyone for participating, and we look forward to receiving your applications. We hope many of you apply.
Yeah, thank you so much. Looking forward to this.